brush upon spectrum of exciting and benefiting themes that discusses the aspects of Dalit mobilization. On behalf of Center for Study of Social Exclusion and Inclusive Policy, University of Jammu, I offer my regards to the resource person for today's lecture, Dr. Ziauddin, Associate Professor, Department of Sociology, and Faculty Al-Bruni, Center for Study of Social Exclusion and Inclusive Policy, Maulana Azad Urdu National University, Hyderabad. I convey my regards to the Controller of Examination, Dean Social Sciences, Head Department of Philosophy, and Honorary Director, Center for Study of Social Exclusion and Inclusive Policy, University of Jammu, and Chairperson for today's online lecture, Professor Jasbir Singh, here only. We welcome all the participants from diverse courses and faculty from our and other universities. Now, I request Professor Jasbir Singh, Honorary Director, Center for Study of Social Exclusion and Inclusive Policy, University of Jammu, to formally welcome the guests and participants of today's interactive online lecture.
Thank you, Dr. Niharika. In fact, I was talking earlier as such. It's my, I would say, privilege to welcome Dr. Khwaja Ziauddin. In that way, I think so far as Dr. Ziauddin is concerned, so far as I was pursuing his work as well as how he has initiated many of the discussions and the points which are the topics which he is working upon, I think it really shows that he is a scholar of repute and he is a scholar who takes on the Dalit issues. So Dr. Zia, it's my privilege to welcome you on the behalf of University of Jammu as well as our center, because the recently Professor Umesh Rai from DU has joined our university as Vice Chancellor. So on his behalf also, I welcome you and rather thank you that you have agreed to deliver this very particular talk on our lecture series. That is a very wonderful topic under social history of Dalits in India, reflections from the field. So it means I expect that in your study or in this very particular lecture, we will be having more in-depth, I would say, parameters as well as the components which would be adding to our knowledge, those who are participating in this very virtual lecture. And I also take this opportunity to welcome all the participants from different our centers in the country, as well as scholars, students, all those who are there with us in this morning. I can well understand that, and we can see the interest of the people as such, that how they have joined this very particular, say, lecture in the morning. And this shows the interest of the people to work on and listen on these very particular topics. And we have to work on to understand, work, as well as research on these very particular issues, which are in particular related to Dalits and marginalized communities as such. So as the director of the center and on the behalf of University of Jammu, I welcome all the participants and with this hope that we would gain much out of this talk. Now I invite Dr. Ziauddin to please, now it is to your time, you please start. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Before inviting Dr. Zia, I'm just going to read out a profile of his. Dr. Khwaja Muhammad Ziauddin in the Department of Sociology has been associated with Center for Study of Social Exclusion and Inclusive Policy at Maulana Azad National University, Urdu University in Hyderabad for around 15 years. He also taught in the Department of Sociology for 6 academic years in Jamia Millia Islamia. He served as visiting faculty at Jamia Hamdard in New Delhi before moving to Hyderabad. He attained initial degrees in sociology from Jamia Millia Islamia, MPhil from JNU, and has a PhD in sociology from Delhi School of Economics, University of Delhi. Apart from his research papers on minorities and Dalits, a few of his book publication includes Muslims of India, Exclusionary Process and Inclusionary Measures, Dimensions of Social Exclusion and Ethnographic Explorations. His upcoming books are Sociology of Health in a Dalit Community, Excess of Exclusion by Cambridge Scholars Publishing, UK, and Reading Minorities in India, Forms and Perspectives from Rawat Publications. Currently, he is working on 2 manuscripts titled Communalism in India, Socio-Historical and Legal Perspectives, and Illness and Health, Sociological Narratives of Dalits. Dr. Zia finds his interest in sociology of minorities, Dalit studies, ethnography, gender politics, and so on. He was selected and attended the US Department of State sponsored exchange program on International Visitors Leadership Program, IVLP, to the USA in 2019. He serves as an executive editor for the Journal of Social Exclusion Studies and an invited editor of the Journal of Sociology of Race and Ethnicity by American Sociological Association. He served as convener of the RC on Minorities, RC 26 of the Indian Sociological Society. So, as if interactive lectures help the students improve their learning in more interactive, topic specific way, these can be helpful not only for the students but can also contribute to the knowledge and practices also. In this series only, we have organized this lecture on Unread Social History of Dalits in India, Reflections from the Field by Dr. Zia. So we welcome you, sir, and over to you.
Thank you so much for this graceful welcome and honor. It is always, in fact, a pleasure to be part of this fraternity wherever we are located. By virtue that the kind of work most of us do is one of the common connect, and then the effort CSEIP fraternity put into is an addition to the body of knowledge which was missing in the social science academy at large. So keeping these two important things, I also congratulate Professor Jasveer Singh for taking up and then also offering courses to students who wish to pursue in this area of study. Thank you, Dr. Niharika. In fact, Professor, the Vice Chancellor of University of Jammu is from Delhi University, and I remember he was perhaps provost of some of the hostel, and then many of my friends would share a lot of good thing about him. It's good that somebody, Professor Rai, is heading the university, and then CSEIP will definitely benefit from this. Thank you, all of you, once again, and I welcome everyone on this discussion series. I'll talk some of the context which I have been working on and why this study or the community which I worked is important to me is that two reasons. One, that I did my initial MPhil dissertations and PhD on the issues of Dalits, and then they were ethnographic studies. It has a lot of qualitative data, and then I have been working upon that. And then perhaps the moment I was working and then finishing these works, I joined Center for the Study of Social Exclusion in 2007. That pushed my, though a lot of argument discussion would take place when I was in Delhi School of Economics, because people who worked in social exclusion studies have a slightly different touch and understanding about locating social groups in the country, which is in pure social sciences, it is not considered very, welcoming. because we do study social group and communities in Indian sociology, for example, but we do not see those perspectives which we, as a researcher, as a student in exclusion studies, have started locating them. So that makes these studies more important. I would be referring at the half of my talk about the field. But then before that, I wish to create a context why these studies are important. Unread social history of Dalits is very important to locate, because when we do study Dalits in India, there are several communities who have not been studied. There are several social groups within the category of Dalits, what we refer today, have not been touched in academia, and that demands a lot of rigorous field work. Let me begin with this, that in the most recent widely debated write-ups, this is just a context I am putting before all of you today, and that the group which and who are referred as constitutionally scheduled caste, we refer them as Dalits. In 1936, the Jat Path Todak Mandal, Forum for the Breakup of Caste, a Lahore-based Hindu reformist group, invited Dr. B.R. Ambedkar to deliver its annual lecture. They wanted a copy of his speech in advance, and when Ambedkar shared it with them, the progressive-minded reformist anti-caste Hindus found the contents unbearable. They withdrew their invitations. Ambedkar never got to deliver his speech. He ended up self-publishing it, and at his own expenses, under the title Annihilation of Caste. Three-quarters of a century after, or more than three-quarters of publications, Annihilation of Caste still remains largely unread by its target audience, caste Hindus, or the people Ambedkar called the untouchables. The terms touchables, privileged caste, caste Hindus, Savarnas, and non-Dalits, which is used interchangeably in my presentations, could not read them initially because it was not to be read. Ex-untouchable, what we today refer, especially Mahars in Maharashtra, admired, adopted, and accepted all means to annihilate caste system, what Ambedkar proposed as his vision and ideas for the emancipation of his community at large. No, it is nowhere lesser than a larger fact that Dr. Ambedkar's writing and speeches remains relevant to all other backward and weaker section of the populations too. Therefore, reading the history, especially in the context of social history of Dalits, is very relevant to somebody who does engage in social sciences. Why do we refer? I'm not an expertise scholar in the field of social history, but we need to see that the term social history is to study the unread people's or communities' histories, and those communities who have been neglected and inarticulated. The history of ordinary people by locating focus upon the social and cultural institutions of the people. In other words, writing and knowing about everyday life. History of society, or more precisely of social structure, processes, and trends, are important to be seen in the social history. Therefore, it is somewhere in historical sciences a kind of subdiscipline on the one hand, and to a general approach to history that focuses on society at large on the other hand. In this context, we find from 1950s to 80s of the 20th century, great expansion and interest of academia and social sciences academia, especially in history and social anthropology, people locating social history of marginalized communities in the world. And they started talking about the movement, ideologies, issues of the communities in public and private. For all these reasons, or for the comprehensive variant of social history, the term history of society in historical senses has gained a lot of currency and importance today. But in sociological writings also, these are upcoming approaches, and it gives you a perspective to locate whom we want to study. Who are the people in social groups who have not been or less touched? And here I found that we need to see some of the communities and some of the caste groups among Dalits who are not being given due importance in terms of doing serious sociological interventions and intensive field work. So whom I would refer here as Dalits. Most of you are aware, and it is a learned gathering, that who are Dalits? Dalits are a group of people who are crushed underfoot, broken into pieces, oppressed, or broken down. In is the contemporary version of those people's name in nomenclature, which we used to call them as untouchable today. Dalit as a group owes, or in its term, its genesis to the 19th century writings of Phule, Govindrao Phule, as well as the literature of Dalit Panthers, a very powerful political group in 1970s in the state of Maharashtra, where the concept of Dalit was seriously used and used for the purpose of assertion, and then assertive identity in the political spheres was gaining significant uh, attention in the politics of the Maharashtra. No, so you would remember that British colonial census also, they grouped people who were, all those communities who were somewhere polluted, quote unquote, if I call them, within quote polluted, and call them untouchables. Later, somebody like Mahatma Gandhi calls them Harijan, and then we are aware of the politics and debate or argument between Dr. B.R. Ambedkar and Gandhi, why Harijan was used and why it should not have been used. The word untouchable is sometimes still used, but Harijan is not at all used. People do not prefer to be used as the term which was initially referred by Gandhi. In fact, it becomes Sagarika goes somewhere, right, that it is an equivalent of Uncle Tom, a paternalistic and paternalistic and categorization of a doomed to remain in perpetual bondage. Dalit leader like Bhaura Gaikwad observed in 1935 that it is no use only giving untouchables a sweet name. Something practical should be done to ameliorate their conditions. These references are seen in the volume 4 of Writing and Speeches of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. So who doesn't know that today a vast number of untouchable castes prefer to use the term Dalit as an identity to assert their rights and being equal in citizenry perspective. We also recall in 2001 UN conference against racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia, and related intolerance, which was held in Durban, South Africa, where people and activists, especially from India, equated casteism to racism, and that became a lot of controversy at the time. But let us come to the point that how Dalit is described, in the textual and scriptural references also. If you go back to slightly old literature, Louis Dumont in 1980s, when he writes his text, where he is describing Dalits as polluted, or in the same way as a menstruating woman, a widow, or a person who has recently been bereaved as polluted. Dalit is basically unclean within quote from birth. He violates by his very experience the Brahminical obsession with hygiene. I unquote here. Therefore, in this context, what is important that the uses and of the term and the concept of Dalit has become very important to us, and doing research into that area. That I would come slightly little late. Let us also see that the uses of Dalit gives you a common pan-India identity to use in academic research, in political participations, and then civil rights societies do work into that. But various names have been used, and a kind of synonymous names or nomenclature have been given. Journey of being untouchables to Dalit is a quite long period in the post-independent India as well. They were called untouchables. We are familiar. Pichada, polluted, Chandal, Shoshit, Ati Shoshit, and then constitutionally we remember scheduled caste. Today, scheduled caste still remains to be the nomenclature to be used in the Constitution of India, but the final uses in the academic writing is mostly it is about Dalit. So why that takes place? In the Hindu caste systems, I would refer to one of this community, the Mehtar, Bhangis, or Relis in southern parts of the country, Balmikis in the northern parts of the country, and they are known by various other names. Uh, they were also, or they are also former untouchable caste, Bhangis and Mehtar or Balmikis, were all conceptualized as sources of dirt and filth, polluting the pure Hindu cultural and social environment. Therefore, one needs to understand why the uses and reference to the particular name of the caste also creates and brings a lot of stigma, shame in the public forum or to those communities who have been into a polluted occupations. And their government's idea that stigma is very important to understand. I am not referring going down to the that, but stigma is very important, because when we see that the person with the stigma is not quite human, when Hoffman refers in his book. Uh, Stigma can also be termed as personal shame, guilt, and embarrassment that happen with a group of individuals on the basis of their primordial identities such as caste, gender, religion, ethnicity, and so on. Here it is caste. Many of you who are located in Hindi heartland, stigma in Hindi is referred as kalank, dhabba, spot or stain, dag, blot or burn, or nindit, condemned, abused, abatement, or chatihin, so on, and chatihin, and so on and so forth. So we have lot of uses in terms of nomenclature, which gives a common sense to describe the life and life world of the people who are, I'm referring here as Dalits, and earlier they were ex-untouchables. So let me bring the context of one of the group whom a lot of debate took place when the 2014 and 15, if you go back to the newspapers, Dr. Bindeswar Pathak, who started organizations called Sulabh International. I'm referring not because what he did, but I want to contextualize the work on Dalits, and some of the Dalits we refer, they are the most backward Dalits. Bindeswar Pathak himself is a Brahmin who works among manual scavengers who are considered to be among the lowest, most polluted, most degraded, untouchable caste by birth, and are often assigned to work of cleaning dry latrines and carrying human excreta. In 70s, when he started his organization Sulabh, and as Rashtriya Garima Abhiyan, a national campaign to end manual scavenging, it becomes one of the national campaign and most known endeavors for the liberation of scavengers and for dealing comprehensively with the problem of scavenging and sanitations. These sanitation and scavenging brings my work close to the interest what I'm referring under history of Dalits. Initially started in some parts of Bihar, it expanded to Delhi and the parts of Rajasthan, and gradually several parts of the country today. The dilemma of Pathak's intervention is found in his ideas that contradicts the very purpose and goals he began in 1970s. I quote here, "It is a historic day. From now onward, the liberated manual scavengers of Alwar in Rajasthan will call themselves Brahmins. They can become high caste Brahmins. By being Brahmins, their mind is filled with emotions and the body is shivering. They're getting high," unquote. I took the help of sociology and decided to help them to perform rites, rituals, and ceremonies of the upper caste peoples. Bindeswar Pathak again talks in one of his speeches. Pathak never uses the term Dalit and does not mobilize Dalits as political social force. He does the good work, some would say, for them right from the outset. In the Indian state's endorsement and encouragement of Pathak, Sulabh has been a hallmark. But why there is a missing gap that their identity is not studied independently, rather their identity is seen from the lenses of Brahminical lenses. That the aspirations of the liberated Balmikis, especially here, one of the most backward manual scavengers in the country, should be seen from the lens of being Brahmin, So Valmiki should aspire to become Brahmins, not a liberated Valmiki and being, independent social group of the country. These are important juncture which we need to look at. Now, there are some studies which I found was important, and there is one very important study which was done on sweepers in Delhi by Vijay Prasad. He does brings the social history of sweepers in Delhi since colonial period. The status of Bangis as manual scavenger was also a very serious point of debate between Gandhi and Ambedkar. All of us know, and Indian scholars in this area is widely available in public domain. While Gandhi believed in manual scavenging as the basis of every service, and even suggested specific educational and practical qualities for being an ideal Bangi, Ambedkar severely criticized such attempts to link a degrading practice with ideals of service and calling it, within quote, a cruel joke played on helpless people belonging to this caste. My early intervention as part of my fieldwork journey at Sulabh offices in Delhi helps to connect how some of the writings by Mukul Sharma refers Brahminical hybridity. No? Throughout his life, Pathak has attempted to indicate the Gandhian social reform, technology, development efforts, education, and campaigns to establish a modern human social order based on social justice and equal opportunity. Yet, at an ideological level, his discourses are expressed in a deeply ambiguous language, often reflecting elements of eco-casteism, what Mukul Sharma refers eco-casteism. By eco-casteism, it means that environmental and ecological discourses that provide a defense of the caste system. Let us take another example in 1990s by a movement which was started by Bezwada Wilson Safai Karamcharis Andolan. And Wilson himself is from Madiga community from Andhra Pradesh, in my parts of the state. It's a national movement, and it was committed and is still committed to the total eradications of manual scavenging, providing all sorts of dignified occupations that scavengers could choose to. And they went through the states, across the country, demolishing the dry latrines, open latrines, and all those patterns which would attract manual cleaning of the human excreta. Therefore, I'll just quote Safai Karamchari's one clarion that we, Safai Karamchari Andolan, shall struggle and build solidarity to reclaim our dignity, equality, and human personhood. Through eradicating manual scavenging, we will break the link imposed by the caste system between birth and dehumanizing occupations. This is contrast to the initiative by Sulabh, founder, where the delinking of occupation with the birth and caste is not being focused. Here, a question remains to be studied in future as well. Will the liberated Balmikis, for example, in Rajasthan and elsewhere, be a new Brahmin at any point of time? Or you wish that they remain to be an occupational group and also a citizenry of the country? These are important questions which I began to explore initially when I was doing my initial studies during my engagement with the Dalits and their issues. Now, one also very important social context we need to remember that the questions of deities and festivities, when we engage on the social history of Dalits, many of the festivals which have been brought into the life of Dalits, which was historically not part, they remained Brahminical and Vedic to bring the low caste born Dalits in the process of assimilating those rituals and ceremonies as part of the every caste group. And these got perpetuated from the initial interventions of some of the people who worked in this area, including Sulabh's initiative. And perhaps it also bring in the Gandhian discourse, how Gandhi located these manual scavengers in his life and some of the writings. Mukul Sharma, in fact, refers in one of his very interesting writing, that do we really find that these Valmikis in Rajasthan who seems to be liberated do aspire to practice Brahminical rituals and practices and wish to live close to them And will that be really a future reality of the Valmikis, that they could live partly in the neighborhood of the Brahmins' houses? That needs to be explored. But let us also take an example of some of the Dalit communities in the eastern parts of the country. Bauris and Hadis in eastern states of India. Bauris is one, Bauri caste is one of the scheduled caste. Hadis are also another scheduled caste listed in the census of India as well. Mostly populated in West Bengal, Jharkhand, parts of Bihar, and Odisha, manifest various adaptations of festivals that were not historically practiced in Dalit families and localities. I also quote here Karma, Durga Puja, Kali Puja are a few popular festivals among Dalits in these states, especially in Jharkhand, which were not historically their festivals. Now they celebrate it. Now, so when you locate these communities from the field, that makes me to bring to my field where I initially started doing my research on Dalits. I used the term Dalits very late. Initially, I was using them as Hadis, as Bauris. I initially did not discourse in my research them as Dalit, because the moment you use Dalit, any of the group, the identity, the social history of those communities are lost. We are not able to describe them. And any social science student immediately takes his understanding back to the 1970s studies in Maharashtra. So we forget the other communities who fall into the category of Dalits. In the state of Jharkhand, there are 22 scheduled caste constitutionally who are listed, and they are the all groups who are one of the most backward communities within the category we refer as Dalits. One of them are Mehtar, Bhangi, and Hadis. I'm referring here, and then second is Bauris. Bauris are the almost fourth populated scheduled caste communities. I'm referring at certain moments scheduled caste, because when you want to locate them in terms of demography, in terms of their population, you have to use that sources, primary sources by census and other district handbook sources. So scheduled caste population in the districts, some of the districts of Chota Nagpur Plateau, you will find that Chamar, Dusad, and are some of the most dominated group. But then Bauris are having very specific cultural world, life world. Similarly, Hadis, and I would be referring now onward. Bauris and Hadis are too important. Bauris are in 2011 census very less population, 45,774 in one of the districts I studied initially. And you do not have numbers of Mehtar, Bhangis, Halal Khor, Hadis in terms of having a separate numbers of these communities, because the Census of India club all of them as into one occupational caste group, and then their population becomes one. So the second problem you would notice very interestingly, that when you read Census of India documents of many of the states, or you will find that many of the names of the caste-based communities are also misspelled. Misspelled. Imagine your name is misspelled, your life becomes very difficult. And the communities, the uses of the term. So Hadis, for example, are referred in Census of India as Hari, Hari. But when you do feel, when you meet people, they call themselves Hadis, Hadi, Hadi caste. It's a very difficult situation for these communities, that how do they perceive themselves. So therefore, Hadi caste shows peculiar and phenomenal sociological insight as their social history. A caste that claims to have lived a superior social status in the past finds in the most degraded socially approved occupation. Indeed, reading the vast social history of a few Dalits like Bauris and Hadis in my research gives you a new insights into the everyday life of community engaged into polluting occupations. All those scheduled castes listed in the Census of India documents as SCs may not be polluting in terms of their occupations. Some of them may be polluting. So we need to refer them. I bring to mention these two ex-untouchables, if I can mention, who have lived into denial and deprivations for decades. They are also listed in that same category. Let us quickly see who are the Bauris. The Bauris are a community, a scheduled caste group in the state of Jharkhand. They are populated in West Bengal and Odisha as well, and some other parts of the country as well. But some of the Bauris also resemble their cultural identity with the Bhil tribes of Madhya Pradesh. I know, and there they are referred as Bauria. The Bhil are the, all of us know that they are the most or third most widely populated tribal group in the country. But the resemblance with the Bhil tribes of Madhya Pradesh and then Bauris in the Jharkhand state and West Bengal do not resemble much, because the social history of these communities have got changed. They are also known by other names: Bauzi, Bauri, Bhoi, Bauria, Buna, Kalia, Kandi, Kothia. And these references can be seen in Peoples of India series, and Herbert Ridgely also mentioned in his book. So these important, why I'm bringing these names to all of you, because by understanding the caste identity also gives a sense of understanding the social history of this community. Bauris are called Bauryas in Asia, Central India. They have close, in certain parts of the state of Bihar and Jharkhand, they have close social cultural association with other communities. But unlike Bauris of Jharkhand and West Bengal, who have moved very close to the rites, rituals, practices, religious ceremonies, and festivities practiced in everyday social life with the upper caste Hindus in the region. No, so how Bauryas in Central India perform their religious ritual, for example, belief patterns, the art and artifact, may not have been similarly influenced by the surrounding they live, as the Bauris in the field I'm talking and referring are there. Let me also bring to the field data. In contrast, let me also tell you that Amulibari in one of the districts tells that, quote, we have almost lost ancestors record in the region. A community who had owned vast land in a few districts of South Chotanagpur, Hazaribagh, Dhanbad, Bokaro, Ramgarh, and Girirdi, where they are living at the mercy of getting paid as labor in the field. Some of us have become part of the urban areas and gradually lost our lands in the hands of affluent caste and communities, and also the development initiatives by the affluent classes. Most of the households sold their lands to high caste groups, and in return they started working into their field, unquote. Though another Bauri member, Mulia, said, I quote here, historically, we have been laborer in the agriculture field and survived our lives by the crops given in exchange of our labor or being paid in rupee. This area was ruled by a local Jamindar who was Bengali under the rule of Maharaja Kashipur of Purulia, presently in West Bengal. British rule changed the system of land ownership in the region, and Bauris became landless labor over the period of time. Some of them got laborers' job in coal mines in the region, started by the British and then followed by the government of India, which was a new organized sector. A lot of politics took place in the name of Bauris, as they have substantial population in a few districts close to West Bengal state. But nothing changed except governments kept changing and promises broken, as told by Amulya Bauris. This I just wanted to give you a field context. I would also now talk you quickly about hardy caste. Hardis are manual scavenger, whereas Bauris are not manual scavengers. They are the urban and rural agricultural laborers at the moment. And then the field data, the ethnography tells that majority of them had lands, but gradually they started losing their lands into the hands of other migrants in the process of urbanizations, and they became landless labor. And today, many of the young people will say that, no, we have been historically doing, our social history is about doing labor work in the field, nothing else. So they also lose their historicity. They have no idea about the history of the community in the region. Whereas hardy caste, another scheduled caste, which I refer Dalit, an occupational group, reside in one of the coolies. The coolie is the local settlement Kuli term is used in this region where scheduled caste or Dalits are residing, not the other caste groups. So Hadi Kuli is one of the locality in the Bokaro districts of Jharkhand. They are the lowest in caste ranking and one of the most backward groups among the 22 scheduled castes in the state of Jharkhand. They are mostly concentrated around Bokaro, Dhanbad, Purulia of the West Bengal, and then Ramgarh districts. You do not have data in terms of their household data in the census of India, but the organization in the field data tells you that around 500 or slightly more households of Hadis live in two districts, Bokaro and Dhanbad alone, as the one of the president of the Hadi Yuva Samaj Manch quoted in the field. They are also referred to the academia as Bangi Mehtar in official terminology, but to the common citizens in the town, they are referred as Hadis. Hadis is equally known as manual scavengers. So you need not to tell them Bangis. The moment you call them Hadis, somebody will realize that it is about Hadi Kuli who are manual scavengers. Today we call them not manual scavenger. All of you know that after 1993 evolution of manual scavenging, we call them Safai Karamcharis or sweepers or sanitation workers. So in the municipal corporations, they are listed as sweepers in this state. Therefore, the second problem is that Hadis are clubbed with another caste group, Bhangi and Mehtar in the state, who are located in other parts of the state together, because three of them do the same occupations. But the problem of knowing the social history of one community begins with there, because you undermine the historicity, you undermine the long history they have lived as social groups, as an occupational group, as a caste group in the country. So the present study was having these interests, that how they are located. Occupation is one important thing, but the second problem is that Hadis have never been enumerated separately. And three of the census of India documents find them misspelling their own identity. Imagine, somewhere they are here, somewhere they are Hari, somewhere is here. So the misspell of the name of this community itself angers them. Then they have given representations when I was also in the field in 10 years back in my initial fields, and that is one important that gave you chance to talk about the community. Hadis does not figure in the census under the list of scheduled caste, but government documents tells that they are the scheduled caste in the district. Russell and Lal in 1916's document, if you go to Google, JSTOR, any of this online stuff, you will not find any documents. I could not find any major study on the name HADI, Hardy caste. You will not find studies on this community, because, and perhaps that was the reason that you do not find the social history of the community. You will find a lot of study on Bauris, but not on Hardis. Russell and Lal in his writings in page number 216 writes, the Bengal name Hari is supposed to come from Haddi in Bengal, which is supposed to derive from Haddi, a bone, and is the bone gatherer, and was familiar to early settlers of Calcutta. They further describe Hardis as sweepers and a bone gatherer, synonym of Mehtar, the subcaste of Mehtar of West Bengal. Caste name and titles have changed in the past, as it was mentioned in Thurston's writing in 1919. Srinivas also found in his studies that caste names being changed in census records. Every census finds a different name. It is thus not surprising to some that Hardis are spelled as here, Hari, Hardis, not Hardis in different census records. Having a very small population in the states of 58,242, as the Census of India 2021 tells us, including Hardi, Mehtar, and Bhangis, a largest chunk of them live in the urban areas. Typically, Hardi communities and these Dalit groups basically very different in terms of their working populations. If you read a study of Shyam Lal and in many studies of manual scavenger, Bhangis in Rajasthan, majority of the workers are female workers doing the cleaning of human excreta. Here, it is largely the men folk. And this also gave me a question and understanding that why in all the studies you will find women were the major workforce doing cleaning work, whereas among the Hardis it was the male and uh, male folks who were engaged into polluting occupations. Perhaps tells you a story that when you go back to them, Hardy's data, I mean ethnographic data, tells that initially when in 1900, 1908 land records, when I checked, it shows that Hardy's initially worked with the royal families of the region who were the kings of Purulia, West Bengal. Maharaja of Kashipur is one of the local ruler under the British regime who employed them. And Hardys tell that we were not engaged initially into polluted occupation, what we call menial occupation today. It was not polluting because they were all given duty to clean the houses, take care of the horses there, and then the term they use is Ghod Sahej field. So Hardys say that we were the Ghod Sahej, not the Bhangi or manual scavenger, what people call them today. And by being Ghod Sahej and caretaker of the royal families' horses, the status of Hardys was slightly much better than the Hardys of other states. But these records of the community are not found in the academic research. No, and Hardys are not visible populations in any of the Indian territorial states. Unlike Bhangis and Balmikis, who are mostly seen in the academic and sociological research. Hardys also belong to scheduled caste category, but only reference I found that Hardys. I'll take 5 to 6 minutes more to wind up. Hardys in all the states you will find them one of the Dalit groups, but in Himachal Pradesh they are listed into the other backward classes, and that needs to integrate. That needs to be reread why, when, how they are there in the category of OBCs. But their historicity is that Hardys gradually, when the royal families, local zamindars, and then rulers lost their, lost after the independence of the country, Hardys lost their employment, occupational employers whom they were serving, and gradually what they could do. The area which is, I'm talking of Dhanbad, Bokaro, Ramgarh, Giridih, Hazaribagh, there are mineral resource, coal mine areas where British started doing a lot of mining. And these localities were finding small urban settlements. These urban settlements brought new occupations, in fact, new kind of employment to the Hardys, and these Dalit groups immediately jumped into taking some occupations, and it was men folk who got engaged into the manual scavenging in the region. That is the reason that I find that male folk are more among the Hardys who are doing this menial work, unlike most of the manual scavenger in the country where females are major work folks. That history of settlements of these people also helps us to question that how Hardys continued doing their traditional occupation for some time, but gradually they started choosing a new occupations, which today they claim that it was not their historically their occupations. It was not their occupation, and that I have written some of my piece. They settled in the urban populations. They settle in the urban locations. So today you will find them in the half of them are in the small semi-urban townships, corporations, and majority of them doing and working into this study. I'll just show one case to you that help me to try and locate if it is visible, and then stop it. The lineage of this group, if it is visible to you, this is from the land records which I found, in my research. I refer in the Narayan Hardy's record shows 1908. 1908, the first land record, which tells them they started settling into the urban pockets once they started losing their occupations to the employers who were losing their empire when British came into the region from West Bengal, that Bengal province. So these populations lineage I have tried to trace. When I converted into word, it has got slightly distorted here. But if you see the last line here, in this chart, what we call what they call it is Khatian land records. 1802 was the land record. The first person from the Hadi who settled in the Bokaro region, and from this you can trace the social history of them. There is the journey of the people in between. You will find when they started coming in contact with Muslims of some of the parts in Bokaro. Many of the names I found were Muslim names. Omar Hadi, Jamal Hadi, Lal Hadi, and in my notes I have written a lot about the field, that how the burials also started got burial rituals, the festivities got influenced with the contact of in the contact of Muslim communities in the neighborhood. So they started naming their children. They would visit to the dargah, they will visit to the people, but then there is a sense of belongingness, that no, we are from a caste group who have worked with the rajas, local kings, and we have superior status. But the kind of occupation they shifted, the kind of occupation they chose, gave them, created a dilemma into their life, and then that is the reality of the today. I stop this slide here. I just wanted to show this picture to all of you. With these important points, lastly, I would say that we need to read not a caste group by using the context of Dalit as one. The every caste group whom we call Dalit, Dalit are in Dalit literature we find them in Marathi literature also, broken, crushed, suppressed, oppressed group of people. So the Dalits could be people today tell even some of the OBCs as Dalit Bahujan, and those you are aware of. But it is sociologically very sensible to go deep down into the every caste groups who form the larger foundation of Dalitism. And Hadis and Bauris are some of them, two of the groups who form Dalits in the region. Within Hadis, you find four subcastes, and one subcaste today reclaim their social history as superior to other three caste groups, and they do not wish to marry to these caste group. They call Maghaya Hadi. Maghaya Hadi, again, I would say that those who served with the royal families, they do not wish to engage with the lower caste bond. But in terms of political assertion, in terms of political identity, they all form as one common group. Therefore, in the state, they have a common forum. They have a common organizations that represent their issues. But Maghaya Hadi, Sahir Hadi, Digar Hadi, or Bengali Hadi, and they keep giving you names. I surprised that one of the responded whom I had spoken is still alive. The youth in 40s and 50 plus ages, they do not know about their social history of the caste groups. Only two people who have survived. One of the name I wish to mention here is, his name is Gandhi Hadi, and his parents name him Gandhi because Gandhi somewhere in the period came West Bengal and also traveled to this part. So people knew that Gandhi is the person who is helping India to liberate, and then he talks about the marginalized and backward castes. So his name was given Gandhi. Gandhi is the only source who brought lot of data on Hadi and Hadi subcaste and the entire social history, which I have not been able to brought before you, who are not recorded in the academic research, neither into the social science contemporary writing, except writings of British anthropologists and some of the colonial officers, who have recorded them as one of the communities or occupational communities in the eastern states of the country. Therefore, I conclude that occupational changes have taken place. Names of the communities have also changed over the period of time, and it has also worked with the kind of association they had, the contact they had with the communities they lived through. So you have influenced of Brahmanical ritual festivities and practices. At times you have close contact with the Muslims, where you find their into their life world, and then again you assert as your identity in the constitutional framework that no, we are this one of the listed scheduled caste group, and we should be given all the benefits which any scheduled caste should get. But my question remain important, that how social history of these communities are important to do sociological, a journey into the field, that is very important. And perhaps in Indian sociology, I understand that we have missed a lot of data, lot of insights, and that is the reason the Indian sociological curriculum, I'm saying my subject here, please slightly being biased into this, that these communities have not been reflected upon the academic curriculum and teaching rooms, classrooms, which makes us, and which is very important to be studied. So I stop here. I am sure there should be some questions that will help me to bring those other areas before you. Thank you so much. I perhaps would have taken slightly extra work. I could not see the time. Thank you so much for your patience hearing. Over to Professor Jasmeet Singh or Dr.
Thank
Niharika.
you. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Zia. It was very, I would say, uh, simple as well as I think thought-provoking and adding to the existing, say, knowledge of the audience. Uh, Luckily, we are having today the Mahatma Jyotibai Phule's Jayanti, and we are celebrating that. And it's very good that on this auspicious day we are having your lecture. Uh, I think so far as the issues which you have raised are very well. So far as the caste structures are concerned, many a times it seems that if we talk about caste as a social structure or in some religion or the Hindu caste structure is concerned, so such type of problems have been there. But when we go a bit further, that when these are being, say, history says, and you know well, that whenever they were being converted to different religions just to give them better education, a bit of better standard of living, here we have also seen that the place which they should have been given in even in those very particular religions and sects, they should have been, but generally it has not happened. I think this shows that so far as our socio-cultural structure is concerned, that is so influential along with the power structure is concerned. Somehow it would not allow these castes to get into the system of the mainstream. And the second point which I feel, even though when these people are being, or they are put into some other, as you were talking about, that in census even or in official records, if their names are changed gradually, even with the spellings. So what happens that in coming generations or the coming times, maybe their historical traces would not be possible as such. So that is also a damaging type of thing. Then the question arises that they have to be kept, say, identified within the larger community or within the mainstream, so that they can help us, or they can be rather helped to have some better status of living. Though we are talking about, I think I just recall Mahatma Gandhi even when he talked about the Harijans, and in reality that was being objected, that when you are talking about or calling them Harijans, it means altogether we are going to lose the identity so far as the identity structure is concerned, and many other things can come out of it. So anyhow, I think this was a very good presentation, and particularly about the Hari structure that Kaus you have taken about. And in the end, you very finely concluded it that even they are influenced by the journal structure of the society, that within their own system they are feeling that some of them are superior and others are not, and they are not having the marriage relations like that. So this shows that this is somewhere there in our mind, that this is not going to be out of that. So, should I take a plunge as a student of economics? What I feel that ultimately, when economic compulsions come, then and then only we give backseat to these caste and caste structures. Otherwise, all these are there, and I think the best exploiter or the beneficiary are the politicians, or our political structure. If they want to use, whenever they want to use, how they want to use, they would use it. And seldom we have seen, though they were being grouped through some movements, they were very good movements even, but the benefits of those movements even could not go or percolate down to the society of these people as such, or the whole structure of these people. So I think that is very important to understand, because I was just going through the chat box. There are many questions, and I think the real questions are being there. And some of the scholars, they are asking that should it be through the research we can do something about the marginal communities, or how they can be brought to the mainstream, say, development processes. So, Dr. Zia, you can well take on from these very particular questions that young minds in India even today are much worried about, that whenever we talk about these sections, why they are not being, even after 70 years of independence or even before, many of the social movements were there, as I have talked about Mahatma Jyotibai Phule and Savitribai Phule, when they have taken education as such. So even these communities could not get benefit out of that. So I think if you see the chat box, and if you
Yeah.
respond one or two questions, I think that will serve their purpose, because mostly I have seen that these are the young brains. They are talking about that some sort of efforts have to be seen. So your comments on that, please.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Uh, you saw, yes, definitely a lot of questions, but then the 2 or 3 maximum points which is connecting to each other. Let me also first say that when we talk of ideology of common man, the ideology of common man or one person does not emanate from individual being. They are all belonging to a group which is located in the social. If you read the social locations in the hierarchy of the social system, the ideology generates from there, and the germinating of ideology is has a very strong foundations on the caste system. So very interestingly, we cannot change ideology of common man, or there is no need to work too much on changing ideology. It is about changing our profession first. What is very important here in the context of this occupational group, that why not a system which has to be completely mechanized, adopted by the state administration across the country, including the largest employer of manual scavenger, which is Indian Railway. Indian Railway in the last 3 or 4 years have started doing some work about changing the flush system, but I'm not sure it has worked. Some of the report shows that problem is with the institutions. Why the institution of caste still finds occupation as an important or primordial identity for a people who belongs to certain caste group? No. what Professor Jasbir Singh was saying is correct. In 1940s, 1942, M.N. Srinivas writes in his notes and says that people from the Mysore went to census officers whenever they found there are new occupations. They went to them, even upper caste went to the census officer and saying that no, we are not from this community. List us into another community. List, give us a new name. No, and this is historically found for last 70, 80 years. Economic is one important aspects. I'm not surprised to see Sarma shoe store, Srivasto leather factory, which was not the case, which could not have been the case in the past. Why? Because you have a lot of benefits. There is an industry which does not demand your physical touch with the dead animals, with their skins. But why dead animals in the village, in the suburb, in the municipal corporations are still, all those carcasses are dealt by a few communities is the questions. Can't we do mechanizations, handling of these menial? Let us call them hygienic and hygienic, and then start using that. I spoke to people in railway stations, some parts of the country. When I was doing a study on Muslim mehters in Hyderabad, I spoke to people. Many of them were Muslims, and they found no, I have no problem. I go and sit with them. But Hindu manual scavengers were not allowed to sit with. So problem is the institutions we belong, and that will not be easy to handle. Dr. Ambedkar gave up, converted to Buddhism, and Mahars largely converted. Others did not follow at large. They still do not follow. Many of the non-Mahar community do not follow the same idea of what Ambedkar chose to. Why? Because you have many other dominant ideas which is coming up with among within Hinduism, that no, Hindu caste system will give you a lot of solutions. Let us come here, we'll see that, and problem will continue and persist. So changing the ideology, nomenclature of the bhangi into as sweepers, safai karamcharis, or sanitation worker will also not change. Uh, Recently, one of our colleague was saying the person who sit in a company front desk, they're called front desk manager, is just a attendant receptionist, but the name you gave, the nomenclature you chose, also gives a lot of sense of dignity and social space. So by having a scientific and mechanical interventions, we can change the mindset of the people that no, these works can be done by anyone. You can see Sarma shoe store, but you can also find somebody who is from upper caste doing. There are people in from the other non-menial caste groups working as cleaner in the malls, shopping stores today, because they demand graduate degree, 12th degree, some sense of better language to talk with the people who visit in the shopping malls. So we need to experiment that. The movement, the initiatives that we will change our mindset, will change our caste structure, will not take place. The professions will bring some perceptual change, and in over the period of time, you may not realize that Hardis were doing what, Bauris were doing what. The social history of the caste will be lost. The way I find in my case that caste people from them, the caste member themselves do not remember their social history today. And imagine in the next 50 years when you have mechanizations of such occupations at huge pace across the world. Europe, Western countries have changed. They have changed. Blacks were doing these menial works. Today everybody is doing, because you get good payment, good remunerations, and some sense of qualification are being asked. So it is not that by the caste and color, it is by the qualifications and skill you are demanded. So these are the some challenges and new avenues I think will bring positional change, ideological change, and making these marginalized communities. I don't understand why do we call mainstream strata. What is mainstream is a problematic concept in social sciences, that we need to debate. Why we want to bring them into something which is called mainstream, and where is mainstream? So I don't understand that. But yes, these are some of the issues which we need to take when we talk of caste and occupations in India.
Thank you very much. I think yeah, very well you have summed up even in your response to these few queries, and I hope that our listeners and scholars would pick up many of the finer points from here, and they would be able to include it in their research. I am not worried about their research and the topics in the research more, but what's our attempt here is to generate some sort of awareness and discussions among the youngsters so that they should come out from this very particular traditional type of thing or what sort of web is around them, and they should start thinking about in a broader framework. And you have rightly said that when mechanization is being there, and when I talk about economics is there, then when economics and some qualifications are being there deliberately, definitely, then the cost or such type of cost structures have to relegate back, or they have to take a back seat. So with these words, once again, I would like to, I think, in that way, uh, thank you very much, Dr. Zia. It was very nice to hear you. Definitely, you have given a few new points even to our center to ponder upon and take some sort of, say, research in such dimensions also. Though we are working on scavengers here, we have worked on, say, deprived communities as such. And very fine thing I would like to conclude here, though we talk about that they are not in the mainstream, they are untouchable, this and that. But if you see the structure, social structure, from a birth of child to many of the things which are treated to be very, say, pious in that way or very religious in that way, such roles have also been given to these people who are uh, so-called or not in the mainstream. So this is, you are very right when you say that the social system is like that. We have to think about. So now I thank you very much once again from the center, from the
Thank you, sir.
University
Thank you
of
so much.
Jammu, and I hope you, whenever you visit Jammu or you are around this area, please inform us. We would like to have physical interaction with you, or otherwise we will also invite you. Now we came to know that our Vice Chancellor is from the EU, and you know him, and then we would like to have your interaction here with him as such. So it would be very pleasant if you visit here. So Dr. Niharika and I would be in touch with you for that. So uh, I express my thank you to all the scholars, students, and all teachers who have joined us from outside. I was just observing that even from Bidar and many places all over India, people have joined. I am highly obliged and thankful to all of you. Big thank you to Niharika as such that you have somehow at the last you have been able to catch hold of Dr. Zia, and we are able to have him on this platform. So at last, thank you very much. Hope to see you all once again. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Dr. Zia.
Obliged.
Thank you.
Thank you. Stay there. Have a good day. Bye bye.
Thank you, sir.